Did you know that for many years in the early 20th century, children were not to be hugged, kissed, or even touched too much by anyone? Adding to this trend, a 1928 parenting manual also cautioned against children sitting in their parents' laps. And even further back in time, people in Victorian-era England kept their children calm, with medicine laced with opium and other narcotics. These are far from the most disturbing, indecent parenting actions out there. Let's face the honest truth. Being a parent is difficult. There are so many facets to it that it is easier to fail as a parent than to succeed as one. And the younger the child, the more difficult it is to control and cater for it. And finally, if you want to be cynical about it, it is an almost thankless job. You raise the child, and the child goes off into the world to succeed or fail, and you are sure the child will still blame you for some form of emotional damage. When the child returns to you later, the child commits you to a home where you spend the rest of your life thinking about where you went wrong with the child's upbringing. It is hard. So it is no wonder then that a lot of people fail woefully at parenting. There are other nuances to parenting that go beyond provision of comfort. The manner of discipline a parent imposes on a child, for example, determines the type of adult that child would become. Also, the quality of supervision matters. But the various problems of parenting that we encounter today are not the peculiar conditions of an age. They go way back. Recent research indicates that most parents now spend more time than ever parenting their kids, and yet they still feel more insecure than ever about how well they do it. We usually look to those who have come before us for guidance, because they have passed through similar experiences and have survived. But really, what could history tell us about what parenting looked like hundreds or thousands of years ago? What we find is most disturbing. Beyond the plague, measles, smallpox, and the myriad diseases and infections that naturally snatched babies from the loving grasp of their parents, there were significant issues with how the children of old were raised. History shows that a lot of children were raised through neglect. There was a shockingly low level of supervision, let alone contact. One researcher wrote that infants were basically bubble-wrapped, bundled into swaddling so tight and thorough they could be, and sometimes were, thrown like a football from room to room. They were also occasionally hung from hooks, like purses in a bathroom stall. More often, the swaddled bundle was strapped into a cradle, as though readying for a space shuttle launch. But that is not even half as bad as what comes next: the frequency with which cradles were placed near open fire. Nearly a third of the infant deaths in medieval England were caused when a baby was burned in its cradle. That sounds like a more serious crime than letting your baby cry a couple of minutes more when you finish up some chores or have a shower. Here is another truth about parenting: nobody knows what they are doing. If we are to go by the evidence we have from research into history, you would be indubitably shocked by just how little we knew about child rearing and the basics of keeping a defenseless human alive from one day to the next. In the 15th century, Giovanni Domenici wrote a book on raising children that would be controversial today. In his book, he recommended a regimen of toughening beginning when the child is small. The infant should be dressed in rough clothing, denied food or wine for long periods, put to sleep in the cold without a bed, and later given laxatives to get used to feeling sick. All of this makes later critically bizarre advice seem logical. In one 1962 book, it was deemed okay to feed 2-day-old babies cereal, 10-day-olds strained vegetables, and 2-week-olds strained meat, and permitting children to enjoy minestrone soup before they're 3 weeks old. Perhaps this all sounds bizarre and unbelievable, but it is true. In some way, it excuses a number of lapses in modern child raising, but there are some trespasses that cannot and should not be forgiven, including acts of violence directly visited on children because the parenting was found wanting. This brings us to the tragic story of Amari Nicholson. Nothing typifies an admittance to a failure in modern parenting more than an Amber Alert. While this situation is usually out of the parent's control, there is no going around the self-guilt that's under one's control: a defenseless human child, because a defenseless child has gone missing. The origin of the term Amber Alert comes from the name of a 9-year-old girl, Amber Hagerman, who was snatched off her bike in January 1996, and following a nationwide search, her body was found floating on a river 5 days later, with her throat slit. That was 26 years ago. While there are terrible people on the prowl for children, there are also terrible parents as well. On May 5, 2021, a distress call was placed to report the case of a missing child in Las Vegas. His name was Amari Nicholson, and he was 2 years old. Amari's case is both a complex mixture of bad parenting and the devious act of a trusted human being. The man accused of killing Amari Nicholson was Amari's mother, Taylor Nicholson's boyfriend. The murderer was 27-year-old Tyrell Rhodes. Taylor had left her son, Amari, in the care of her boyfriend. On April 30th, Amari's mother, Taylor Nicholson, went to Colorado to assist her mother, and she left Amari with Rhodes. During the trip, Taylor and Tyrell argued over telephone calls and through text messages. During a particular text argument on May 3, 2021, at approximately 3:35 a.m., Taylor indicated the relationship was over, and she told Tyrell someone would be stopping by the apartment later in the day, apparently to collect her belongings. But 2 days later, police said Rhodes told Nicholson that an unidentified female came to the apartment and picked up the child. He said the woman claimed to be Amari's aunt, and Taylor told him she sent nobody to pick up Amari. Taylor Nicholson subsequently called 911 and reported her son had been kidnapped. Following investigation after the Amber Alert call, the police quickly found out that Tyler's claim that someone had come to pick up the boy was false. During an interview with police on May 11th, Rhodes, while undergoing a polygraph test, admitted to police that he killed the boy. Rhodes said he hit Amari 3 to 4 times with his fist on the morning of May 5th inside a unit at the Emerald Suites. The child's face then turned blue and he stopped breathing. Rhodes claimed he attempted CPR, but Amari died. Rhodes would lead police to the boy's body by drawing a map of where he had buried him, near a brick wall between the Siegel Suites and McDonald's in the area. There, police found a bag of soiled children's clothing, as well as a small area of blood splatter in the apartment. Amari's mother, Taylor Nicholson, reported the boy missing on May 5th. His body was found a week later on May 12th. But it gets even grimmer. While being investigated on May 11th, Rhodes grabbed an officer's loaded gun and pointed it at 2 detectives. He tried to kill them before officers subdued him. Rhodes faces a first-degree murder charge in the toddler's death, along with 2 counts of attempted murder after taking an officer's weapon in an interrogation room. He also faces 4 counts of assault on a police officer with a deadly weapon and 4 counts of resisting a police officer with the use of a firearm. It gets even more incredible. 1 month later, Taylor Nicholson would be arrested by undercover officers on the charge of prostitution. That will be all for this one. What other cases of indecent parenting do you know of? Kindly like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below.